dragons is the topic that I chose for this first study group of the year. And first off, there are members who would say that this topic is totally inappropriate because seahorses are not mollusks. And in the past, mollusks were the only thing that were allowed to be mentioned in the Englewood Shell Club. And although the outside of the seahorse is hard, it's fused bony plates that are rich in calcium, like shells, but they're not shells. And sea dragons, seahorses, and their other third relative in the group, pipefish, are all true fish, believe it or not. When Linnaeus was classifying all the plants and animals of the world back in the when, he classified seahorses as amphibians. So there's been confusion forever as to what a seahorse and a sea dragon really are. I've been delighted the last few years to see this club move to start looking at the entire coastal and ocean habitat and to adopting a marine habitat conservation ethic. And so I felt because of this that seahorses and sea dragons were perfectly appropriate. Everybody loves seahorses, and you kind of wonder, well, why? But you think about it, it's largely their looks. They have the head of a horse. They have a prehensile tail like a monkey. They can change color like a chameleon. They also move their eyes independently. Each one can go in a different direction, and they can both record at the same time. And that's also like a chameleon. They have a pouch like a kangaroo or a possum. And since we all ended up today being women, I think the thing that probably intrigues most of us is the fact that it is the males that get pregnant and have the babies.
How come they did something?
In ancient mythology, seahorses were felt to be the steeds of the sea gods, and that they would be larger under the water, and the sea gods would get on them and ride under the water to go to battle or to go hither and yon and do whatever. And the name, they all belong, all three groups, the pipefish, the dragons, and the horses, all belong to the genus Hippocampus. And in Greek, hippo is horse, and like hippodrome, and campus is sea monster. So we've been looking at sea dragons, seahorses with awe for an awful long time, undoubtedly before the Greeks as well. Although seahorses are found almost worldwide, the only place there are no seahorses is in Antarctica. Very interesting. But they are poorly studied. And the first fact I'm going to give you just shows how really unstudied or how evolving the study is. When I looked at references, well, the new national, where I got the idea was for a topic was the April 2022 National Geographic. And it says there are 46 species of seahorse. Well, what I had been looking at before online and in some of the references that I'll give you later, they said 350 in 2002. 350 species of seahorse. Mm-hmm. Then in 2018, it was earlier than that. They were saying 350, like late 1990s. Then by 2002, it was 120 species, and now it's 46. So I think the thing is, we've now moved, like we have with all plants and animals, to looking at the DNA and classifying things according to their DNA rather than what they look like. Mm-hmm. And so we found that a lot of things are lumped together. But even National Geo, who says now there are only 46, says there are new species being discovered every day. So it is interesting, but it shows how evolving the study is. Mm-hmm. Most seahorses are found in warmer water, but there are species in northern Norway. There are others in southern New Zealand. The lined seahorse, which is one of the ones that we have here, it goes from Nova Scotia all the way down the east coast, all the way to Argentina, and circles around the Florida Keys and comes up the Gulf Coast. And so, you know, very, very widespread for just one kind. This is a picture of a pair of seahorses together, and they go together like this, most species, every morning, and give each other greetings. And sometimes will change color. And then this shows some of the different species around the world. This one is one of the largest, and it is the Pacific seahorse, 15 inches. Wow. And then here is a little dwarf seahorse that we have here that's less than an inch. So 15 inches to less than an inch, lots of different colors, as you can see here.
Where does it say where the dwarf is found?
Right here.
Oh, really?
We are a hotbed, as I will tell you why in a little while. Wait a minute. Okay, so usually seahorses are found along the coasts, in seagrass beds, in mangroves, in estuaries, but they also can live on corals, and many species do, corals and reefs further out, or in seagrass beds that are way out, which I didn't really realize. There often are seagrass beds that aren't just coastal. This was new. You know, I learned about the ocean as well as about seahorses as I did this research. So let's look at the ones on our coast. We have two main species, but there are 4 in total that live right here. So the first is the lined seahorse, L-I-N-E-D, and it's named lined because it has white lines on a fairly dark or gold body that on its head and on its neck, and so that's what gave it the name lined. It's Hippocampus erectus, and it's about 5 inches in length. So this is an example of a lined seahorse, both of these. The first seahorse that I found was this guy, and it was Christmas time, and we were at Minnesota Beach, and the whole family was there, and there was a seagull that was taking this guy way up high and then dropping it, you know, on the hard sand, trying to break it open like they do with bivalves to get to the goodie inside, and it would pick it up again and let it go again, and over and over. And Mark, my son, finally said, "What in the heck is this?" And by that time, the gull was not interested anymore anyhow, and it was this seahorse. Well, then it was a long time before we found more. Linda and I walked the beach at least 3 mornings a week, Minnesota Beach again, and during the last bad red tide epidemic, we found lots, sad to say, dead among the seagrasses that got washed up. Wow. And so probably, I don't know, at least probably a dozen more we found. And so I hope this current red tide doesn't cause the same problem, but it's certainly a possibility. Some other things about the line. It's also called, because of where it goes all the way from Nova Scotia down to Argentina, it's also called the Northern or Atlantic. And I think the Atlantic is a really good name because it goes all along the Atlantic coast. And it's the only species found along the U.S. coast north of North Carolina. So the line is here. And it's found on floating masses of algae. And so I think that's one way that it got spread from place to place, is that it would be in these floating masses of algae, and as the tides take them hither and yon, well, then they moved to and ended up in a good place, new place. And they are mainly in seagrass beds, but they can live up to 250 feet deep.
Wow.
So it's really amazing. They have up to 300 babies, and a 3-week, lucky dad, huh? And 3 weeks, dad carries them around before the babies are born. The second kind we have here is the dwarf, which is that little less than an inch size one, and that's the first seahorse that I found here. And I found it, Richard and I found it together on one of the wading adventures with Bobby at Cedar Point. And you're given it, if you haven't done it, you get a net, and she says, swoop through the water and so forth. And then we were given a bucket, and so she said, put water in it and put your stuff in there. But if you find a dwarf seahorse, a little guy just about like this, stay right still and call us. Just holler and wave your arms, and we will come to you. Well, Richard and I were the ones that found the first one, and the reason for that is that the dwarf seahorse that we have here spends its entire life in 1 square foot of water.
Wow.
What's more, they mate for life. And if one of them dies or gets, taken, the one that's left never remarries.
That's smart.
And so, it was very, if we had taken it in to show everybody, we wouldn't have gotten it back in the right place, and that pair bond would have been broken forever.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, isn't it? It's fascinating. They like warmer water than the line, and so they really like it down here. They also like it with more salinity. So the saltier, and again, the warmer the water, the saltier it is. And they come in a lot of colors. They can be beige, yellow, green, or black. And lots of people call the dwarf a sea pony because it's so little. And the only one in the world that they know about so far that is smaller than our little dwarf or sea pony is the pygmy in Southeast Australia. So nothing else around here, any place. I found a description. And so here's a handout for everybody. And I think I have just probably about enough. If we are short, give me one more. If I am short, we'll get you more. I'll just copy them off afterwards, but I didn't want to make more than I really need. So as you look at the picture of the guy of the seahorse overall, if it was a dwarf, which is only, I think it's interesting, it's the one I found the descriptions of when it's the littlest. So it has 9 to 10 rings on the body, and it has 31 to 32 tail rings, and it has 12 dorsal fin rays. That's the back. On the back of the animal, there's that's the dorsal fin, and then it has 11 to 12 rays on the pectoral fin, which is right up on by its cheek. Okay, and I can't even imagine. They must all use a microscope to figure out that there's 11 to 12 rays on that little fin.
Now, excuse me, when you say ray, what do you?
Spines. You know how a fin is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
How there's. It's got to be flexible to do its thing in the water. Yeah. The dwarf ranges from the Bahamas over to Biscayne Bay, and then around the tip of Florida and through the Keys and up the Gulf Coast as far as Pensacola. So, but we are we're right in the center of its area. They're active in the daytime, and they are all in shallow water in seagrass beds. So that's the dwarf. Then there's 2 more. the long-snouted seahorse is Hippocampus reedi. Used to be reedi. Now it's glutalis. Glutalis. Yeah, that's right. And it's more in the Florida Panhandle and on the Florida Atlantic coast than right here. But we do have some of them here. And they have, I've got a picture of them. That you could tell them, whoops, wrong. The long snouted. And one of the things that's unique about this guy are all these little points. These are skin tufts that stick up both on the head and all around the body. And I would point out, look at, as long as you're looking at the picture here, the top where it looks like a little crown, that's the coronet, and you'll see that on your picture. And I'm gonna mention it later, but as long as I've got this picture here, every seahorse's coronet is different. They're just as different as our fingerprints.
Wow.
So not just different species to species, but everyone is different. And I think that's one reason why they used to say there were 350 species of seahorse, was they would look at the coronet and say, oh gosh, that's a lot different from this one. And they'd say it's got to be a different species. And now they know by DNA that that's not the case. But really interesting. But I think it's misnamed. I mean, just, long snouted, to me, our little line is longer snouted. And so it's kind of it's interesting.
Anita?
Yeah.
That's longer.
Oh, great!
What do you think? Long
I bet you that they're bigger, and so I wonder if that isn't a long snouted, and it has a longer snout.
Wow.
I'll be neat. And you got yours. I remember you got a whole bunch somewhere or something, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I went to the Seahorse Farm.
Yeah.
In Hawaii.
Yeah.
wow.
So that's.
Does it have all the spikes all the way down the body?
Yeah, I kind of.
Well, it looks like they broke
But,
off.
but I think they could have, they are,
broke off it.
Yeah, I think so, the skin.
yeah, because it was skin. This one usually lives in shallow water, the long-snouted. It loves eelgrass as opposed to just the other kind of grasses. And it moves with the currents and the tides. And so it's very widespread. Here, it's south of North Carolina in this country and around here. But it also is on the European Atlantic coast and in the Mediterranean Sea, the long-snouted. So very, quite interesting. And then the fourth kind is the slender seahorse, and I've just read about it recently. And it was called, it is now called H. reedi. And that's what used to be the name of the long-snouted. So I think the slender and the long-snouted are very, very much alike. And they split them and put the reedi name with the slender and changed the name to glutalis for the long-snouted. There again, south of North Carolina, but all the way down to Brazil, and then up here in the Gulf of Mexico some. And the difference about them is that they live out 40 to 200 feet from shore. So that is kind of an interesting thing. And they are brown with white spots, and we're going to just let the film go. And it's one of the largest. They're up to 8-9 inches wide.
What is the largest size? Like I
15.
found one, because I found one on some pass when I was turtle patrolling, the size of $1.
Then that would probably have been this slender. It's the largest one here.
Slender.
Slender,
Oh.
like skinny. Slender. Okay. Some of the characteristics of seahorses, in no particular order. I found these in my various references, and then when I was compiling my notes, I just put them down so they aren't necessarily in one order. One thing about them is that they're really tough to see because they have such great camouflage. And so, like, I've never seen a dwarf just waiting, even though they're there. You have to kind of pull them up. Most of them are, well, they can change color, as I mentioned before, in the area wherever they are.
What was the color of yours when you saw it?
Ours, it was kind of greenish,
Was it?
actually. Yeah,
The
because it
little
was
one?
in the seagrass. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was. And they are. They're green, yellow, black, and brown. The dwarfs, and depending on where they are. But it's the camouflage is like, our anoles that change color. So we used to have a charcoal grill out here with a cover on it. Whenever I'd take the cover off, there was a black anole, whereas all the others that are running all around the pool deck are beige. So that's a characteristic of all. But they do come in other colors. There's one kind that they describe as having orange pimples, and it lives on a coral that also has orange pimples. And then there are others that are purple, and they live on purple sea fans. So they definitely, they're tough to see. A second thing that is good for them is that they don't have very many natural predators, because one, they're not very nutritious. They're this bony plate, and whatever is inside is hard to get to, as we saw from the gull that was dropping it and couldn't get it open, and couldn't get it open just pecking on it either. And the bony plates that cover are fused together. So, there's not even a hole to kind of get in for a critter to pry it open. Let's see. Okay, reproduction, always fun. Okay, so the male has a pouch, as we know, and the female deposits the eggs in the pouch, and the dad incubates them. And again, the references vary. Some say 6 days to 6 weeks. Some say 9 days to 45 days. But so, it's a fair amount of time in some cases. They can breed any time of year. And the dwarf, as I mentioned, mates for life. And they give live birth to 1 or 2 babies in the case of a pygmy, to 1,500 in the case of one kind that I'm not quite sure. I'll tell you which one. I found a reference that I'd like to read to you about reproduction. Seahorses reach their extremes in outlandish behavior in the area of reproduction, testing the very limits of what is possible. The male undergoes a true pregnancy. The female produces the eggs, but the male carries them in a special pouch on the underside of the tail. Embryos embed in the pouch's epithelial tissue, and oxygen is supplied by capillaries. So it's just like the uterus. The male does not appear to provide much nourishment to the young. However, he definitely contributes calcium and can alter the chemical composition of the fluid within the pouch to meet the needs of the developing babies. Seahorses, at least those studied thus far, are also unusual in forming exclusive pair bonds, some for life, as we know the dwarf. Pairs have been observed to stay together even when no young are produced after copulation. Single animals typically take a long time to find a new mate, if they ever do. Many species appear to reinforce this bond with a highly stylized greeting ceremony that is performed throughout the breeding season at least, and in the case of dwarf, every morning. The female initiates the ritual by entering the male's territory, and they usually in the morning, and then both animals may change colors. Often they become lighter in color, and the male circles around the female, and then they hook their tails together, and they can hold on to hold on to either a seagrass in the area or hold on to each other for at least an hour, sometimes all day, if it's breeding season. And the reason for this is felt to be that the female, when it's ready to produce its eggs, it has to hydrate them. But once they're hydrated to make them fertile, then it only lasts for 24 hours. So if the male's pouch isn't ready to take the babies, then the female just gets rid of the eggs into the water and they're eaten by something. And so by having this elaborate ceremony where they get together and all, they find out, yeah, it's time, or no, it's not. So quite interesting. Actual courtship can be lengthy, up to 10 hours in certain species. It involves spiraling in a manner similar to that of the morning greeting, and then swimming about with tails interlocked. Just prior to mating, both rise towards the surface, which makes them vulnerable, and the male pumps his tail towards his body, forcing water in and out of the pouch. At this point, the female aligns her egg duct or ovipositor with the male's pouch and transfers her egg strands. Egg output varies greatly. The tiny shrimp seahorse lays but 1 or 2, which makes, while the males of the big-bellied seahorse have been known to carry 1,500. The male's subsequent rocking motion after copulation seems to settle the eggs down into the pouch. They are incubated anywhere from 6 days to 6 weeks, depending on the species and the temperature of the water. And there's a picture here of the pot-bellied giving birth. Wow. And so here are these teeny little babies. They just look like little sticks. And so they're tiny. Well, you can imagine. I mean, if there's 1,500, that he has to. That would be quite a thing. Okay. So a few other characteristics. They attach to seagrass here, coral and reefs other places. They don't move much. None of the seahorses, or not that many, move that much, except those that go with the tides, but they don't move on their own that much. They all stand upright, so they go through the water like so, and they move up and down by rotating or flapping the dorsal fin on their back, and that takes them up or down. And then the pectoral fin, right beside their head, that steers them, so it can go more this way or more this way. So that's how they move, but they don't go like this, and they don't go like this. They mainly go straight up or sideways like this. Quite interesting. The gills are circular rather than, most fish gills are kind of crescent shaped, but seahorses have circular gills, and they have no teeth, and their whole snout, the whole jaw is thick, fused, so that they really don't open their mouth to eat. They have no teeth in there. And they basically suck in food. And so I'd like to read you a quote from Helen Scales' book, which is on your list. The book name is Eye of the Shoal. And this is a really fascinating book. It's mainly stories about the ocean and about her experiences with the ocean and the critters in the ocean. And one of her stories is about meeting Jeannie Clark, known to us more as Eugenia
From my hometown.
From her hometown, and who is the shark lady at Mote Marine, who had the stamp this year produced in her honor. And so I'm even going to use some of these for Christmas cards. If you haven't had the Eugenia Clark stamp yet, I'm sure that we've still got them around. And then even, not to digress, but even since Jeannie Clark's, there's one on National Marine Sanctuaries. That's also cool. So be looking for those. So what she says, seahorses are described in the literature as champion suckers, but they do not suck in seawater and strain out zooplankton like whales do. Instead, they actually suck in one tiny shrimp or other piece of food at a time. A seahorse lines up its snout. It's got these eyes, both sides, so it can turn, whichever way, just below a target. Then it tightens muscles in its head, which stretch tendons, like pulling on a rubber band. And a trigger muscle then releases the stored energy, and the seahorse head rotates, sucks in the shrimp.
So it does have a little mouth.
So it has a little mouth, and these little brine shrimp are smaller than this. And they're smaller. That's another thing I learned. I knew all about brine shrimp, but I didn't know how little they are. Listen to this. Newborn seahorses are especially good at this sucking. Like most animals, they are born ready to go. Unlike most animals that have to learn to suck. High-speed video has shown that the foals, and I think it's cool, that the babies are called foals, just like baby horses are, can rotate their snouts as fast as 1/80th of a second.
Oh my gosh.
And these newborns will eat 4,000 brine shrimp a day.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
That's all they do. Just
Suck them
eat, suck them in.
My kid ever did.
Yeah, so it's just, it's amazing. So that's the kind of interesting thing there is in this Helen Sales book. They do make sounds, seahorses. They make clicking noises when they turn their heads. I suppose because so much of the body is fused, and then there's these things going on, which is interesting that it doesn't scare the brine shrimp enough, or they're going so fast that they just don't have a chance. But they also can move their cheeks and make purring noises and growling noises. So that's neat. I found this fascinating, especially after some of our conversations the other day at the board meeting. Seahorses have no stomachs. They take in the food, and it just passes them through their GI tract, and then you'll notice on your picture the anal fin is right here. So this is where it's not down low. So you think about the male here, and that's why I kept these now. I'll pass them both around together. But so right here in the middle, right here, is that's the end of the GI tract. But there's no stomach. So the food just sort of passes through, and what hasn't been digested is excreted, and that's it. So they have to eat pretty much all the time. But so that's above the pouch. So this one is a male, this one is a female. You can see the difference. I think better than, your picture shows the one. But so pass those around so that you can see them together. I think it's neat. They have a definite backbone, as you can tell. And I mentioned the cornets all being different. And most are active during the day, but a few are nocturnal. And the tail is used not only to hold on to seagrasses and in mating, but also in battles among the males. So they will get their tails together, and then they butt snouts or butt chests and fight to determine which one gets to have the mate. So I can just imagine that.
Boys.
The pair generally forages separately, but they greet each other each morning, and then they go off and they feed during the day. And I already said that the female approaches the male for that morning thing. And The species that live farther north go deeper in the winter because they can live, the ones that do live up north or way down in southern New Zealand, they can survive well at 40 degrees Fahrenheit, but not actually frozen. But that's, when you think about ours liking the warm weather, it's interesting. Then conservation, such an important thing. Every species of seahorse is classified as threatened at this stage, every single one. Some species have lost 90% of the total population in the last 20 years. And this article tells about several species off the coast of Portugal that have just the population's been completely decimated. So why is that? One thing, the shallows are vulnerable. And the more storms we have, the harder it is on the critters that live in the shallows. And we certainly just undoubtedly witnessed that. I haven't found any seahorses yet on the beach, but if they may be finding them who knows where at Fort Myers Beach. Second, and seagrass beds, as we all know, for everything, it's where the baby scallops are, it's where all the little fish grow up, everything, there's something we're always struggling to maintain are the seagrass beds. Because boats go in, their propellers destroy them, and just everything. It's just really, really tough. Another thing that I was very interested in is that deep water trawling still takes a big toll on seahorses. 80 countries have uncontrolled fishing, period, and uncontrolled fishing for seahorses. Now, when I was teaching a class on seafood at the University of Wisconsin, it seemed as though most countries, because the deep trawling is so indiscriminate, it wrecks the bottom of the ocean and it takes everything. And so then they would take out the fish they wanted and throw the rest back. And so countries were doing away with not allowing deep water trawling. And I thought that was still true, but according to this National Geo, it's not true anymore. As fish have become more popular and more scarce, countries just keep adding deep water trawling back in. And so it's something to become an activist about. It's felt 76, I don't know how they came up with 76 million seahorses are caught inadvertently by deep water trawling every year. 76 million.
What do with them, I wonder?
Well, that's the point. They dry them, and they are used in Chinese medicine, traditional Chinese medicine. They are ground up, and they increase men's virility, according to traditional medicine. Another thing is they're cute. They're trinkets. Grandmas come to Florida, and they buy seahorses to take home to their grandkids. And so that's something we need to discourage. And I was horrified by the aquarium trade. They are a huge thing in the aquarium trade. And yet they're very hard to breed in an aquarium, and they're very hard to even keep alive. And so most of them die. And so so the books all said, the references all said, even the ones that are telling about how to keep them in an aquarium, say, be sure you only buy ones that are captive bred, and never a wild one, because that's just too bad. But on the good side, hope for the future, right here in Englewood, there are two guys who have perfected the method of breeding seahorses, and are doing so successfully. They get the wild ones, they put them in these huge aquariums, they have the babies, And then they don't just release them into the Gulf right away. They keep them until they're bigger so that they have a better success rate. More of them live. And so we actually have more seahorses right here than most other places because of these two gentlemen who live here and keep these guys. So it's great. And so for the future, awareness, you know, letting people know about how vulnerable they are. My dental hygienist, she was telling how she reeled in a dwarf seahorse on a piece of seagrass when she threw a lure out. And I said, you know, if it's a dwarf, they mate for life. They only live in 1 square foot of water. Think where you cast that lure and take your boat over there and drop it in there. And she said, well, I'll do that in the future if I ever have another. So, you know, awareness, and just awareness to people to not buy them as trinkets or to whatever else. Very important. And there's some feeling that young Chinese men are much more into scientific medicine and are not going to be consuming huge quantities of dried seahorse. But in 2019, now that's only 3 years ago, one shipment from Peru headed to the Orient had 12 million dried seahorses.
Oh my gosh.
So, you know, it's we're there. Then the final reason that everything is good is, or maybe good, is that there are getting to be more protected areas. The article here talks about two protected areas off Portugal, just as an example, but other places too. And this is the first time that we've really had any kind of protection for seahorses. I'm going to say just a very few things about sea dragons. And as I mentioned, sea dragons and pipefish are the cousins of seahorses. And the picture of them kind of tells it all. This is a weedy sea dragon. And they do not curl their tail. Their tail is even longer. They swim sideways. They swim further, so they have larger territories, but still only you know, they don't, not a mile for each one. All sea dragons are Australian, and the two main kinds are weedy and leafy, and all of these things sticking out are actually parts of the body, and they're camouflage to have them blend even better in with the seagrasses and just look like a weed, or you know, a leafy stem or whatever. So that is the weedy sea dragon, and this is the ribboned pipefish, the big guy. And our pipefish don't have all that stuff. They're just, and I didn't even realize our pipefish were related to seahorses, but they are. The whole family is. And this is again an Australian one. And just a few other things about them. The males do not have an actual pouch in this case. They just have an area of sensitive skin that the female puts the babies on, but again they burrow in so that they get both food and oxygen from the male, and it's just a spongy patch, and they live more in sandy areas instead, and I think I said they're all Australian. The leafy sea dragon is the official marine emblem of South Australia. The leafy is 8 to 9 inches long, the weedy up to 15. So they're bigger than many of the seahorses. And the male in this case chases the female instead of the other way around. That's it, like the others. And it takes 2 years for them to mature. But the hatching, because there isn't an actual pouch, there's just this spongy area, the eggs hatch within 24 to 48 hours in the case of sea dragons. But they still have a yolk sac attached. So the first few days that the little sea dragons are swimming around, they have egg yolk attached to their bodies that they're still using for nutrition.
Oh,
And they only 5% survive. And out of 250 eggs is the average that gets laid. So that's it. Any questions? I don't know whether I can answer them, but that's what I've got.
That's pretty thorough.
I did want to mention that National Geographic just seems to be focusing on the ocean more and more. It's one of their real focuses. This is the most recent issue, and it has one article on octopus mothers that's really sad. They only breed once. They die.
Yeah.
And then they die?
Has everybody seen My Octopus Teacher on Netflix?
Yes. How many times?
I know. It's a wonderful, wonderful documentary set in Cape Town in South Africa.
Cool.
I cried.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
The other Nat Geo, the April issue with the seahorses. There's also a really good article about horse conchs in there, and our speaker
It's a
in
different
March. Oh,
Yeah, it's in this one.
yeah, our speaker in March wrote the article, and the expert she consults is our speaker in January.
Yeah. So this would be, hate to say it because again they're not mollusks, but it's another fascinating article in that one. And then this one, this absolute most recent one, in addition to having the article that's sad about the octopuses, a Pacific rebirth, all about coral reef regeneration in the Pacific and how they're doing it. So it's great. So so it's something to look for in the library and look at if you don't subscribe.
I just wanted to say when we were in Hawaii, we visited a farm that actually raised them, and the reason they raised them was so that they would sell them to aquariums, so aquariums wouldn't buy them from other places,
Right.
but also do a lot of research on them. There are
Yeah.
only 3 in the whole world
Yeah.
that have seahorse farms, and
Which island?
Kauai, and in Kona. And the other thing is, I did see the dragon. They did
Yeah.
have 2 dragons.
Well, there is a wonder, or at least there was last time I was there, the Florida Aquarium in Tampa has unbelievable sea dragon and seahorse exhibits. They're just absolutely wonderful. And the first time we took our grandson, he was about 3 or 4, and so we've been through all of this, and then he wanted to go back through again. And of course, the seahorses and the sea dragons were one of the best places as far as he was concerned. So we were back there again. He overheard another mother telling the son or daughter that these were both the sea dragons and the seahorses were seahorses. And he said, "Should I tell her?" and I said, "No, they're cousins." Well, Hunter has 12 cousins. So then he was okay with that. That was okay. But the Hawaii deal, another article that I found here this summer that I thought I'd mention today, these are Hawaii's land snails.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that Hawaii had land snails just like Cuba and the Florida Keys. But Jackie Hall says, yeah, she's seen them. And so they're all protected, but all and they look so much like so many of ours. And it's interesting that they would be.
Are the guys in Englewood, do they have to be licensed to do that?
Yeah, they have some. Yes, they do.
So they get licensed by somebody and then they're like a tiny little.
Right.
Yeah.
So when Madeline says that there are just 3 farms, actually we've got a farm right here.
A teeny one right here?
Yeah. So that's really, very, very, very positive.
Is there any research on how long seahorses live?
Oh,
Question.
yeah.
I
That is
wonder in
real
a
good question.
farm how, if they're.
Yeah, I think I have it someplace, and I will
Who goes down and gets all the food for those little?
Let you know, but I don't,
Ask Google.
yeah, right,
How
that's
long do
good.
seahorses
Yeah.
live?
And you know what, you could put your hand down on one of the,
3 years.
3 years.
3 years.
you could put your hand down in one of the bins,
5.
and they would come and
And wrap around
Wrap
your,
around your finger.
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
That's so cool.
That's interesting, they would let you do that.
You had to, I mean, you had to clean your hands, you
Yes.
had to put Clorox on, I mean, you had to be really careful to
If-
do that, and there was only one area. You couldn't do it in all, you could just look at the rest of them, but there was one section.
You know, there's this great, big, gorgeous sea turtle facility over in Palm Beach, North Palm Beach, kind of Jupiter. And they were raising little ones, and they were doing all kinds of research and everything. And they got, by having the people coming through and all, they got infections. And almost all of their seahorses, or their
Same
sea
with the
turtles died.
manatees,
Yeah.
yeah, when I went kayaking with them down at the powerhouse, it was the same thing, they said, do not touch,
Don't
because
touch.
Yeah,
we
Yeah.
can get
Just a
them
good
sick.
general rule. Just
Yes.
general.
Yeah.
yeah.
Keep your
And
hands off
they
Wi-Fi.
had these big, oh, probably as big as this room, tubs of water, and you could see this when they're being born all the way up. It was just unbelievable. It's, if you ever get there, you need to go see that.
Definitely.
because it is-
How do they classify, I mean, they're threatened, right?
Yes.
All the seahorses are threatened.
Yes.
But in 12 million dried ones were in one shipment from Peru. So do they have a population estimate, and what do they do to say they're all threatened? It sounds like that's like a lot of seahorses.
Yeah, right, and that's what they don't know, and so they've put them all they've classified them all as threatened because
they
everybody-
don't know.
because they don't
Okay.
know. So in
Yeah.
a lot of cases, it isn't. They don't have hard data.
Yeah, it must be very hard to do a population estimate anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
something
they're
like that.
so tiny and
Yeah.
they're so camouflaged.
Yeah, and live in,
Everywhere.
yeah, and independent, they don't live in colonies, right? They-
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
so that would be
And
challenging.
and the sea dragons, well, all of them forage independently. You know, while they are
Interesting.
together, part of the time they're just individual critters. Yeah.
Do these two gentlemen who are raising seahorses in Englewood, would they ever give us a little,
I don't know any
Sure.
details.
oh,
Karen, are you the one who told me about this?
No,
Who is somebody?
I'm not even sure who that is, but as far as the endangered and threatened species go, that is super political.
Yeah.
Because each time you take an animal and move it from endangered and then step it down to threatened, all the laws and regulations change.
Yeah.
And then you have international endangered, you have national, like in the United States, and then you have Florida.
Or it is.
Yeah,
Statewide.
so
This
Yeah.
was
and each
Statewide.
time you move
Yeah.
an animal from one stage to the next, it changes the amount of funding that their nonprofit gets. It changes like the thing we've had with the manatees, how they were endangered and now they've been moved to threatened.
Yeah.
And now all the boat owners want to get rid of the no wake signs.
Yeah.
And that whole thing had to do with the amount of permitting that we gave for docks. So all of these animals, the only problem they have is us. Okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
These animals don't have natural predators.
Right.
They do have predators, but not like an abundance. We're the alpha
Oh, yeah.
alpha male. We're the top apex predator. We're all these animals' problem.
Aren't we supposed to be the ones with the brains?
Yeah.
You know, overbuilding, over permitting, building on barrier islands. I mean, look at, especially in the Pacific areas like Indonesia and everything, that's where a lot of your seahorses for sale to the tourist trade comes from.
Yeah.
So really the only way you can stop that is to just not buy it. And it's really not going to stop the whole thing, but at least you as a person can say, I'm not going to buy something that impacts the environment like that.
But it does go both ways. wolves in Wisconsin came in naturally,
Right.
and within 10 years, there were 70 times more wolves than what the DNR projected the territory could hold. 70 times more. And so the state of Wisconsin, the biologists wanted to take off some of the rules.
Yeah.
But the environmentalists said, oh no, so it is, and when I would, go for walks by myself, once Richard was gone, and I'd get to the road and there was a hunting pack
Oh,
right down
gosh.
the way.
Wow.
That's
It was
terrifying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't feel as comfy
There's
as I
enough bear
used
spray
to.
for that one, you know?
But the good thing was, that I never knew before that, was that one of the favorite foods of wolves is beavers. And so we had such a problem with beavers on our property. Just they would take in 1 week, they would take 70 trees off of our 600 feet of shoreline down them and come clear up by the cabin. I mean, we had some that came so close to knocking over the cabin. And now we didn't have any beaver problems anymore once there's lots of wolves.
I just want to add one more thing to the seahorses. As shellers and shell crafters, what we can do is when we do a craft with a seahorse, or even has a seahorse in it, or even just the image of a seahorse, we can be ready to talk about what we know about the environmental issues.
Right.
And so it's real easy to polarize things and go, you're good, you're bad. But we have to find our own way through the middle. And as long as we know that the issues surrounding like seahorses and sea dragons, it's a great opportunity with our shell collections and with our art to inform people, and especially younger kids.
And
Because
horseshoe
they're-
crabs too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so many things.
Yeah,
Well, if you think of it this way, if you find it on the beach, it's dead.
yep.
And you can have an argument over whether it should be staying there to re-nourish the sand and the environment there and all the rest of that, but it's still dead.
Yeah.
So you don't have to feel like, oh, I bought a giant bag of whatever and God knows where it came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, or how did it get here and who am I supporting wherever. And I think some of that is just us stopping to think, about what am I doing? Where is it coming from? And I don't know, it's sort of been an awakening everywhere, I think, that people are starting to realize, oops.
Yeah.
I've been to a couple of classes, and I do have a seahorse, but it's a resin one. It's a
Well, you know where that
but
one
it still
came
looks-
from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it still looks like a seahorse, and it's on my thing, and I'm happy.
And you're
And,
happy.
and I would say, use them judiciously in your arts and crafts, because I had one on the wreath on my lanai out here, and all of a sudden I realized the ants had eaten it completely.
Oh
So
my
bizarre.
That's why I have a
Whereas,
resin one.
whereas there's one up there on that one, and I did those two things about the same time. I know I put the seahorses on at the same time. And this one inside is fine, but the one out there on the lanai,
Must be the calcium, whatever it is that the exoskeleton is made out of. It must be
Well, lots of creatures
good
like
demands.
to eat it.
Yeah.
Right. I
Yeah.
remember being so thrilled with having a little dried seahorse when I was a kid, and my dog ate it.
Oh.
My dog was thrilled.
so it probably tasted salty, you know?
Yeah, that too. Yes.
I've done a lot of scuba diving, and it's so hard not to take. I mean, I never have, but anything mine is live, and so it's just, but it's wonderful to look. I mean, it's. I did see a pygmy.
Did you?
Seahorse off. I didn't spot it. One of my friends did, but I went and saw it off the coast of Borneo. We were staying on an island that was off the coast of Borneo. That's at home, Malaysia, Indonesia.
Yeah.
We went to different places.
Cool.
Well,
It's exciting.
I tell my grandkids when we go to the beach and stuff, I said, if there's somebody living in there,
Yeah.
But don't take it. You put it back where you found it, whether it be in the water or on the sand. And they're like, oh, well, how come I really like the shell? Because somebody's living
in there already.
Right. And it could be a mommy or a daddy, and maybe it's a baby, but you know. So I think the more that you educate from grandchildren on up, it helps. Because even my kids didn't know.
That's so true with
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
People have no
Right.
idea of the consequences of their actions
Right.
often.
Right.
They just don't know. Like I actually watched, it was an FWC person get ready to heave a shell that had something live in it, 50 feet out in the water, and I was like, stop. I said, you will literally kill it and give it whiplash. So I said, you need to like walk it out and just let it go. And they're like, really? And it's like they can't know everything.
Right.
And now they know, and now they'll tell other people.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
At least 10.
Yeah, well, they will because they do educate, and most of those people are in the business they're in because they love wildlife and the environment and all that.
Right.
Most of them did not go into their profession so they could yell at us all day.
And
Right.
that is a perfect example of where you offer the alternative that is positive. You don't blame them
Yes.
for starting to do
Yes.
something incorrect.
They
Just
did.
say, you just walk it out there, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
We had a speaker last year, a guy who talked about, he dove and they got shells that were live
Yeah.
often, but it was okay because they ate them.
That's Adam Wilson.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, and
That sounds-
that bothered me.
Oh, well,
it's a sustainable harvest as it's referred to.
yeah. And after all, if we eat scallops,
Yes,
shrimp,
yes,
crab,
You don't eat
Crabs.
seafood
yes, I know.
or beef or
Yes,
pork or
yes, of
chicken
course,
or
but it was just that he was,
and as I used to even say in
they weren't
classes,
your typical.
when I would have somebody that was thinking about vegetarianism, I'd say, well,
Well.
the plants you eat are still living.
Yeah.
Animals are dead, but the plants are still respiring. That strawberry is still breathing. That's how come you have to have it under refrigeration.
That's
You
why
can't
Thanks for
stop it.
ruining that
And
for
it
me.
could be attractive.
I understand exactly what you're saying, but I deal with this in other aspects. But you have to believe they had licenses, they had bag limits, and hopefully they were being responsible and knew someone was checking their bags.
They just weren't your typical
No.
things that are seafood that we eat.
Yeah.
That
Was it again they were
farmed
eating?
or,
It
so
was.
I guess that's why it kind of bothered me that.
Yeah.
What was
This
it
was
they
near
were?
Borneo?
No, it's here.
No,
It's
no,
here.
no,
They're
it's
here.
here.
It was Adam Wilson. Remember when he
yes,
was?
yes.
I thought he was one of the best speakers we've had.
Yes.
was
He
very
was.
good.
Yeah.
He was.
What were they eating?
Different types of,
Shellfish.
Yes, sort of.
yeah, not your typical kind.
Things that
Like
live in
conchs
shells.
and-
Yeah. But again, nothing that was protected.
Yeah,
Yeah, they weren't be allowed to, and he wouldn't
No,
be licensed.
they weren't. He wasn't. He would see queen
Yeah.
conchs, but he wasn't
Yeah.
taking queen conchs or anything like that.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
it's just, it's kind of one of those I'm going to say to each, everybody has to decide where's your personal line.
Yeah.
Like I won't gather anything that's alive.
No.
Just
But
like-
we used to. I
but
mean, my dad
people
loved.
do.
Yeah, my dad
Yeah.
loved mussels, and we got them out of our river.
Yeah.
Where our cabin was, and he just thought they were fantastic.
Well, it's the same as fishing. If you start to
Yeah.
think about these things,
But
it's
they're
like,
not
okay.
endangered.
Yeah.
You're not gonna go,
A lot of the freshwater mussels and clams are.
Now they are, but
well,
they
back
probably
then
weren't
maybe
then.
they weren't.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, they probably weren't then.
Yeah.
And that's, it's subsistence, existence also is so different, like all the native peoples that still
Right.
use the environment around them to live and all those kinds of things. It's just like, I don't know, we don't need to me, it's just like, I like to just find things. It's like,
Yes.
okay, I found it, and you never know
Yeah.
what you're gonna
Yeah.
find. People are always asking me, did you find what you were looking for on the beach? And I said, always, cause I'm looking for peace and tranquility and someplace to go that is, you know what I mean, like that. And if you find something also, that's cool.
The plus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Now, do you have the same discussion about bears?
Absolutely, constantly about everything in the natural environment, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, bears are not, it's interesting because last night I was on a webinar that, I did not feel like going to. And 6 o'clock last night, it was on Gobi bears, which I'm sure none of you have ever even heard of. They live in the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. There's 45 of them.
Oh my.
If all together, if you want to talk about a critically endangered species.
What do they look like? It seems
They look like they are a member of the brown bear family, so they kind of look like underfed grizzly bears. Because they live in the desert and they're vegetarians. They eat rhubarb roots and all this stuff. They have all their teeth ground down to nothing by the time they're 12 because they have to eat all these rocks to get to the rhubarb roots. It's just, and there's, a whole little study group working on them and they're trying to get funding. And it's the same as everything. Their habitat is endangered because the grazers who live in the Mongolian desert graze their sheep in the same area. So they're working with the government. And this is the same. You take this little tiny thing and you just multiply it everywhere. As what could we do to the populations, for the populations that use, let's just say, seahorse harvesting to live on, to give them something else. What they're looking for, the Mongolian herders, is they're going to be like our farmers, made me laugh. They're going to pay them not to graze on those lands. So they'll actually get money, and then they'll, be encouraged to go graze their herds someplace else. It just so struck me at the workshop I was at. Conflict is just the same everywhere.
yeah,
It's just
it is.
different, but it's the same.
And it is for plants as well. I mean, I taught wild food gathering too,
It's just-
and boy, was interviewed once on television, and the person, said, "Well, I think you're endangering the species that you're gathering," and I was able to come up with enough to show that wasn't the case, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted.
Yes.
It was being aired on a Chicago station, What I really needed.